Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so before I start talking about what happened in this week's chapter, I do want to quickly say that I hope all you guys are staying safe out there with this whole COVID-19 business going on. I know it probably sucks, had to be quarantined and all that. It's a real fucked up situation, but if we can try to find one silver lining from all of this, is that a lot of us actually get the chance now to catch up on a lot of the anime, manga, and probably video games that we've fallen behind on due to the fact that we had school and work and such. I know I will try to take advantage of this entire situation myself to do all that. But unfortunately, working a retail job, I still have to go to work every day. It sucks, but there's nothing I can do. But anyway, the point of the message is that basically, I hope all of you guys are staying safe, doing what you can to basically keep yourself from getting sick, and try your best to make a good thing out of a bad situation. Anyway, getting into the actual chapter, even though this chapter wasn't as hype due to the lack of action in it, I do like how Tabata was able to take a break from the fight and dive into some more character development for other characters. Especially since he was able to do it in a way that didn't really slow down or even pause the pacing of the fight or the story. Because he starts the chapter off by, diving into the fight. Then we spend a majority of the rest of the chapter dealing with the character's backstory and doing more character development for this character. And then we bookend the chapter with seeing that the fight continued off screen and going into brand new developments for the fight. So yeah, like I said, he was actually able to dive into some character development and do some backstory, which would usually result in either completely pausing or at the very least slowing down the pacing of a story without really having to slow it down and keeping it at the normal pace. Now, picking up where the last chapter left off, we saw that Asta managed to land a hit on Dante, which now that Asta managed to do that after a whole bunch of effort in trying to, he gets to now see exactly how Dante fights when he's pissed off, because as we can see in the chapter, Dante is no longer playing any games with Asta. He was testing him out in the first few chapters, but now that Asta actually managed to do some damage to him, he's done playing. And we actually get to see him use his brand new move, or at least new to us anyway, and I believe it's called Gravitation Heavy Infight or something like that. Basically what it does is that Dante uses gravitation magic to heavily increase the weight of his fist, and he just decimates Asta with punch after punch. Now, what's interesting is when you see him land the first punch, when he pulls it back, you can see that there's either some blood. It's confusing because of the fact that, obviously the chapter is in black and white, so we don't get any color, so we don't know if it's blood. It could either be blood, or it could be the dark, magic or anti-magic that Asta covers himself in when he goes into his dark form. Now, if it actually is blood, it's interesting because as far as I can tell from the chapter, Asta didn't look like he was bleeding after that hit. So maybe that was Dante's blood. Maybe using this magic on his fist does damage to him as well. When he lands a strike, it cracks his skin because maybe his skin can't handle the intense weight of his fist now. But then again, like I said, the chapter actually is in black and white, so it could very well be that Asta actually did start bleeding after that hit. But because of the fact that, obviously the stuff that's covering his face now is black and his blood will be black in the manga, it will be very hard to tell the difference between the two. So the backstory and character development we get for this chapter is actually for Grey, which is obviously heavily implied by the fact that the chapter is called Cinderella Grey, which we'll get to in a second. But I'm really glad that we got this, because if you remember my last review for last week, I mentioned that we really, out of all the Black Bull members, we really know the least about Grey. We really haven't had that much of development for her. I mean, before this chapter, the most development we had was that we ended up finding out that she is actually a girl, that giant, bulking, monstrous-looking guy form that we've seen from the beginning of the series wasn't actually her true form. Just, kind of cute, small, blue-haired little girl form actually was who she really is. And that's really the most development that we've got from her up until this point. I mean, we've seen the way she fights or the way she uses her magic, but when it comes to actual character development, we really hadn't gotten anything prior to this. So it was actually really a breath of fresh air to see the fact that we're actually diving into what her character is and developing her at the same time. But anyway, just like the title of the chapter implies, Grey's backstory is pretty much just a story of Cinderella. She obviously had the two evil stepsisters. We assume the evil stepmom, we don't actually get to see her in the chapter. She's forced to be a servant and very heavily picked on. And we even kind of get a scene where, just like how in Cinderella had that dress made for her by, all the animals that she became friends with, and the sisters get very jealous of how beautiful she looks in that dress and destroy it. Similar kind of situation happens where Grey, she's showing off her magic abilities, the fact that she has transformation magic to her sisters because they want to see it and they're picking on her. She transforms into one of them, and they immediately start bullying her, throw her out of the house, and while running away crying, she immediately gets attacked by a bunch of bandits. And while she's being attacked, she actually ends up getting saved, surprisingly enough, by Gouch, who is pretty much her stand-in for Prince Charming in this situation. And it's actually because of the fact that he saved her and kind of encouraged her to get stronger that she eventually went on to, take the Magic Knight exam and become a member of the Black Bull, where the two of them actually eventually ended up meeting again. Now, what's interesting and kind of funny about this is the fact that the only reason why Gouch saved her was because Marie asked him to. So if it wasn't for Marie, who I can kind of assume was more like the fairy godmother in the situation, the two of them would have never met. She would have never been encouraged to basically work past her kind of shyness, kind of, self-doubt, get a little bit stronger, and eventually ended up being able to meet her Prince Charming again. So yeah, Gray's pretty much Cinderella, which now that I think about it, we don't know what Gray's other name is besides Gray. We don't know what her surname is, or if Gray actually is her surname. So for all we know, it could actually be that her first name is Cinderella, so she could actually be, just like the title implies, her name could actually be Cinderella Gray. But what's kind of interesting is the fact that this is now two characters in the Black Bulls, two female characters, that are kind of inspired or kind of, hinting at fairy tale stories. Because if you think about it, obviously Gray is Cinderella. And if you really think about it, Vanessa is kind of like Rapunzel. The whole being locked up in a tower, or being locked up by a witch or someone else who wants to use an ability that they have for themselves and not for the world. And now I'm really trying to think, is there any fairy tales that kind of parallel the backstories of Noelle and Nero as well? Because I could imagine that Sabata might be going for this whole, each member of the Black Bulls, or at least each of the female members, have a kind of like fairy tale backstory to them. So let me know in the comment section down below if you can think of any fairy tale that would fit their backstories. But anyway, after we get on the flashback, we see that Gray actually has new encouragement after remembering all of this, and she is determined to save Gouch, which obviously, like I said, makes a lot of sense now that we got the flashback from why she is so determined to save him and she's so close to him out of everyone, because he was the first one that saved her life and inspired her to actually become who she is now. But anyway, she uses her transformation magic in a very interesting way. First off, she uses it to basically destroy the sword, which is nothing new. We've seen her use her magic to manipulate objects before. But what's very interesting is that she uses her transformation magic to heal Gouch. And really the best theory I could come up with as to how this actually works is that basically, keeping again, I'm not a scientist, I don't really understand how any of this works. But the best theory I can come up with is that basically she's using her transformation magic to transform any damaged tissue, cells, organs, anything like that that's damaged inside Gouch that's actually killing him into ones that were no longer damaged before or weren't damaged at all. And if that's really how it's working, her healing magic just became possibly the most overpowered healing magic that we've seen in the series. Because really think about it, with this level of healing, she can pretty much heal anyone from anything besides death. Like obviously she wouldn't be able to bring someone back to life with this type of transformation magic, but she can pretty much heal any wound as long as they're still alive. And if now that I think about it, if she can actually heal or transform fire, like how we've seen her transform poison into cotton, then she could probably even give Fugoyan a real arm again by just taking his firearm that he's created and basically transforming that into a real flesh and blood one. Now that being said, even though this transformation healing magic that Gray's just developed is very obviously OP, we can tell by the way she looks in this chapter when she's using it that it's actually very straining on her, probably takes up a lot of mana, so she wouldn't be able to just do it willy-nilly. It probably would be like a one-time use, or maybe like 2 or 3 time use during a fight. Probably wouldn't be able to heal multiple people at once like how Mimosa can do it. So even though it is very OP, like I said, there are still some drawbacks to it. But anyway, Gray finally managed to return the favor by saving Gouch with her new transformation healing magic, just like how he saved her, obviously all those years ago. Which, now that I think about it, I'm trying to figure out exactly when it happened in Gouch's backstory, because I'm pretty sure when we got his flashback, we saw that him and Marie were actually very, very young when their family got destroyed. And as we see in the flashback from this chapter, he looks like he's about maybe 15, 16, probably 17 when he met up with Gray and saved her. So, obviously it had to take place before he ended up getting arrested and Marie got sent to the orphanage, because the two of them were together in the flashback. But if I remember correctly about him being very young when his family was orphaned, I'm wondering how long were they on the run before he obviously got captured? Or was this prior to their family being destroyed? I'm just misremembering how old he was when it happened. But anyway, even though Gouch is saved, the situation's still pretty dire, because right after Vanessa realizes that Gouch is being healed by Gray, Asta comes crashing down to the ground out of his black form. He was obviously defeated by Dante. And now that Dante's seen what Gray's able to do with her transformation magic, he realizes that both her and Vanessa are arcane stage mages. So now he plans on taking both of them with him. And just as he goes in to kind of try to capture them, this is when we see our man Yami finally shows up. He uses his dark dimensional slash to cut a hole or cut a line between the 3 of them. And he's like, hey, stay the fuck away from my squad. So yeah, that's pretty much where the chapter ends. And even though I was actually extremely hyped and extremely excited to see Yami finally show up, now that Asta's completely out of the fight, I'm really worried about how this is going to go for Yami, because with him and Yami teaming up, I thought that maybe the two of them had a chance of defeating Dante, but now that Asta's completely out of the fight, unless Yami got extremely, vastly more powerful than he was prior to the 6 months time skip, I don't realistically see him beating Dante if Dante decides to go up to full 80% of his demonic power. Because right now, keep in mind, he's still using 60%. We didn't see him go up to any other percentage in this chapter besides the 60% that he went in the last one. So as of right now, he still has 60%. So maybe Yami can fight on par with that. But I don't think alone Yami can defeat Dante when he goes to the full 80%. Now, that being said, we can still see the other characters like Vanessa, Gouch, Gray, probably Zora and Magna when they eventually show up again, and Finral. Maybe all of them combined could possibly drive Dante to retreat. But with Asta out of fight, I don't see them defeating him, and I'm actually really scared that we might see Yami take a very bad L in this fight and get captured just like how we saw William Vengeance did. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the chapter. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and like I said, try to stay safe and healthy out there. See you guys again next week. Peace.